Cheating is often called a mistake, but mistakes happen without awareness. Cheating happens with intention. Cheating is not a momentary slip, it is a choice. Are you aware of how your actions shape your love? Many people believe betrayal is sudden, unavoidable, or a mistake, but the truth is more subtle and more profound. Cheating begins not in desire, but in avoidance, secrecy, and unconscious patterns. Understanding this truth is the first step toward conscious relationships and true trust. A mistake happens in a moment of unawareness. Cheating happens when awareness is repeatedly ignored. We often soften betrayal by calling it a mistake. The word itself feels gentle, almost forgiving. A mistake suggests accident, clumsiness, something done without intent. But cheating does not belong in this category. It is not a single moment that arrives unannounced. It is a path walked step by step. Before cheating ever becomes physical, it exists in thought, a thought that is entertained instead of observed, a feeling that is justified instead of questioned. Then comes secrecy, the deliberate decision to hide, to erase messages, to construct an inner wall between truth and appearance. And finally, action. Not once, but often repeatedly. This is not accident. This is choice. A mistake has no preparation. Cheating requires preparation. Time is given to it. Energy is invested in it. Awareness is bypassed again and again. At any moment along this path, there is an opportunity to stop, to reflect, to speak honestly, to face discomfort instead of escaping it. Cheating happens because these opportunities are ignored. Calling cheating a mistake allows the mind to avoid responsibility. It turns intention into coincidence. It shifts the narrative from "I chose this" to "it just happened." But growth begins only when language becomes truthful. When we name actions clearly, we reclaim awareness. And awareness is the doorway to transformation. This is not about condemnation. Understanding intention is not the same as moral judgment. It is about clarity. When we see cheating for what it is, a series of conscious decisions, we can also see where intervention was possible. We can see where honesty could have replaced secrecy, where courage could have replaced avoidance. Cheating often emerges when someone refuses to face their inner state. Dissatisfaction, restlessness, or unmet needs are not the problem. Avoiding them is. Instead of addressing truth within the relationship or within themselves, one escapes into distraction. What feels like desire is often avoidance wearing a different mask. Responsibility does not mean punishment. It means ownership. When someone owns their choices, they regain power over their future ones. Without ownership, patterns repeat. With ownership, awareness grows. If cheating were truly a mistake, it would not repeat. It would not require lies, planning, or silence. It would end the moment awareness returned. But cheating continues precisely because awareness is suppressed. Love does not end because desire appears. It ends when honesty disappears. Conscious relationships are not free from temptation. They are free from self-deception. They are built on the courage to face discomfort directly instead of hiding from it. When we stop calling cheating a mistake, we do something important. We stop protecting the ego, and we start protecting truth. And only truth has the power to heal, whether that healing happens together or apart. Do you believe cheating is a mistake or a conscious choice? Have you ever seen how awareness could have changed an outcome? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your perspective may help someone see the truth more clearly. Betrayal does not begin in the arms of another. It begins in silence with the refusal to look inward. Cheating is rarely about desire alone. It is more often about avoidance. Avoidance of discomfort, avoidance of dissatisfaction, avoidance of a truth that feels too heavy to face honestly. When someone turns away from their inner reality, that unexamined truth does not disappear, it finds expression elsewhere. At the earliest stage, betrayal looks quiet. It begins as restlessness, a sense that something is missing. Instead of pausing to observe this feeling, many distract themselves. They stay busy, they scroll, they flirt, they seek stimulation, anything to avoid asking the deeper question: what am I actually feeling? Self-reflection requires courage. It asks us to sit with discomfort without immediately resolving it, to admit dissatisfaction without assigning blame, to acknowledge longing without acting impulsively. When this reflection is avoided, dissatisfaction becomes pressure, and pressure seeks release. secrecy becomes the escape. Not because secrecy is exciting, but because it feels easier than honesty. Honesty demands confrontation with oneself first, and then with the partner. It risks conflict, vulnerability, and possible loss. Secrecy avoids all of this, at least temporarily. It creates a private space where one can avoid responsibility while still chasing relief. This is why betrayal often feels sudden to the person on the receiving end, but internally it has been building for a long time, thought by thought, justification by justification. Each time the truth is avoided, the gap between awareness and action widens, and into that gap, deception quietly steps in. Avoidance creates a split within the individual. One part knows the truth, another part runs from it. Cheating becomes the external expression of this inner division. The relationship does not break first, the self does. Facing inner truth does not guarantee comfort. It may reveal dissatisfaction, unmet needs, or the realization that something must change. But facing truth keeps integrity intact. It allows for honest conversation, conscious decision-making, and real growth. Avoiding truth preserves comfort only briefly, at the cost of trust and self-respect. Betrayal is not caused by temptation. It is caused by the refusal to pause and reflect. Awareness interrupts the cycle. When one learns to observe desire instead of obeying it, clarity emerges, and with clarity comes choice. True fidelity is not the absence of attraction. It is the presence of awareness. It is the willingness to face inner truth before it becomes destructive behavior. When awareness is present, dissatisfaction becomes dialogue. When it is absent, dissatisfaction becomes deception. Have you ever noticed how avoidance of inner truth led to problems in a relationship? What changed when you chose honesty instead of escape? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your reflection could help someone confront their truth. Desire is not the enemy. Unconscious desire is. Desire arises naturally, like hunger or curiosity. It is part of being human. Yet, in relationships, desire is often treated as something dangerous or shameful. This misunderstanding leads many to suppress it, deny it, or secretly act on it. But desire itself does not destroy relationships. What causes harm is desire that goes unnoticed, unexamined, and acted upon automatically. When desire is met with awareness, it becomes information. It tells us something about our inner state: longing, restlessness, boredom, or the need for connection. Awareness allows us to pause and ask, what is this desire pointing to? Without this pause, desire becomes impulse, and impulse, when unchecked, becomes behavior that creates harm. Unexamined desire bypasses choice. It feels urgent, demanding immediate satisfaction. It whispers justifications. This feeling must be acted on, or this doesn't mean anything. In reality, it means everything. It reveals the gap between awareness and action. When desire is acted upon unconsciously, responsibility disappears, and consequences are ignored until they arrive. Desire does not require obedience, it requires observation. The moment you observe desire without judgment, its grip weakens. Awareness transforms desire from a command into a message. It allows you to feel without reacting, to experience attraction without betrayal, to acknowledge longing without deception. In relationships, destructive desire often appears when presence is lost, when connection fades, when communication becomes shallow. Desire seeks stimulation elsewhere. This is not because the relationship failed, but because awareness left first. Desire stepped in where honesty should have lived. Acting unconsciously feels freeing in the moment, but it fragments the self. One part enjoys the satisfaction. Another part carries guilt, fear, and secrecy. Over time, this division erodes integrity. And without integrity, trust both in oneself and in the relationship collapses. Awareness restores unity. When desire is brought into consciousness, it can be discussed, understood, or redirected. It may reveal the need for deeper intimacy, personal growth, or difficult conversations. These paths are uncomfortable, but they preserve truth. Acting unconsciously avoids discomfort, but multiplies suffering. A conscious relationship does not demand the absence of desire. It asks for honesty about it. Desire acknowledged openly becomes part of growth. Desire hidden becomes a force of destruction. What we suppress controls us. What we observe transforms us. Desire is energy. Awareness gives it direction. Without awareness, desire consumes. With awareness, it informs. It becomes a teacher rather than a tyrant. When we learn to sit with desire instead of obeying it, we reclaim our freedom. We discover that attraction does not define us, our response does, and in that response lies the difference between growth and betrayal. Have you ever noticed how unexamined desire led to harm or confusion? What changed when you chose awareness instead of impulse? Share your experience in the comments. Your insight may help someone regain clarity. Responsibility begins long before action. It begins with awareness. Responsibility is often misunderstood as obligation or restriction. But in truth, responsibility is the ability to respond consciously to what arises within us. In relationships, this means acknowledging feelings, desire, dissatisfaction, curiosity, or restlessness before they turn into behavior. Cheating occurs when this responsibility is avoided. When someone says, "it just happened," what they are really saying is, "I did not pause." They did not pause to reflect on what they were feeling. They did not pause to speak honestly. They did not pause to consider consequences. Responsibility was abandoned and impulse took control. Cheating shifts responsibility outward. Circumstances are blamed. Loneliness is blamed. The partner is blamed. Even emotions are blamed. I felt disconnected. I needed attention. I was unhappy. But feelings do not act on their own. They wait for permission. Cheating is the moment that permission is granted without reflection. Responsibility does not demand perfection. It demands presence. It asks for honesty before secrecy, conversation before escape, courage before avoidance. Responsible love says, "something is changing within me, and I must face it." Irresponsible love says, "I will act first and explain later." Difficult conversations are uncomfortable because they expose vulnerability. They risk conflict. They risk loss. But avoiding them does not preserve the relationship, it erodes it silently. Cheating often feels easier because it postpones confrontation. But what is postponed grows heavier. Truth delayed becomes betrayal. When responsibility is embraced, choices expand. One can address dissatisfaction openly. One can renegotiate boundaries. One can choose to leave with honesty rather than betray with secrecy. Responsibility restores dignity to difficult decisions. Without it, harm multiplies. Cheating fractures integrity. It divides the inner self, one part acting, another hiding. This division creates anxiety, guilt, and confusion. Responsibility reunifies the self. When actions align with awareness, peace returns, even in uncertainty. True responsibility is not about control. It is about alignment. Alignment between inner truth and outward behavior. When this alignment exists, cheating becomes unnecessary. Desire is acknowledged. Dissatisfaction is discussed. And decisions are made consciously rather than reactively. Responsibility is power. It returns agency to the individual. It says, "I am not a victim of my impulses." It reminds us that every moment offers choice. Cheating is not destiny. It is the absence of responsibility in motion. When responsibility is reclaimed, relationships become spaces of growth rather than avoidance. Trust deepens, not because temptation disappears, but because awareness remains present. Do you believe responsibility could have prevented betrayal in your experience? What changed when you chose honesty over avoidance? Share your reflection in the comments. Your insight may help someone reclaim their power. The ego does not want love. It wants to be wanted. There is a subtle but powerful difference between connection and validation. Connection requires presence, vulnerability, and mutual awareness. Validation requires only attention. Cheating often arises not from deep longing, but from the ego's hunger to feel special, chosen, and desired. This hunger is endless because it is rooted in insecurity, not love. The ego feels incomplete by nature. It measures itself through comparison, approval, and external affirmation. When attention fades in a relationship, the ego interprets it as rejection. Instead of asking deeper questions, what is missing within me? What has changed between us? The ego seeks immediate relief. Validation becomes a shortcut to self-worth. Validation feels intoxicating because it temporarily silences self-doubt. A compliment, a glance, a message, these small signals create a sense of importance. But this feeling does not last. The ego cannot be satisfied permanently because it is not built on awareness. It is built on identity and image. What must be continually fed will eventually demand more. Love, on the other hand, does not seek confirmation. Love rests in presence. It grows through understanding, patience, and honesty. The ego confuses validation with love because both feel good at first. But where love deepens over time, validation fades quickly and leaves emptiness behind. Cheating becomes tempting when validation replaces connection. The relationship begins to feel ordinary, while validation elsewhere feels exciting. But excitement is not intimacy. Excitement stimulates the ego. Intimacy nourishes the self. When ego-driven desire is mistaken for love, betrayal appears justified in the mind. The danger of ego-driven validation is that it requires secrecy. Validation loses its power when exposed to truth. That is why cheating often lives in hidden spaces, private messages, secret meetings, unspoken thoughts. The ego thrives where awareness is absent. Connection demands courage. It asks us to be seen not only as desirable, but as vulnerable. Validation avoids this risk. It keeps interactions shallow and controlled, but shallow connections cannot sustain meaning. They dissolve once novelty fades, leaving confusion and regret. When awareness enters, the ego is exposed. One sees the craving beneath the desire. One recognizes the fear of being insignificant. This awareness does not condemn, it liberates. It allows us to choose depth over distraction, connection over applause. True love does not constantly reassure the ego. It invites the ego to rest. When the ego is quiet, connection becomes possible. Cheating fades not because temptation disappears, but because the need for validation dissolves. Validation can make you feel alive for a moment. Connection makes you feel whole. Have you ever mistaken validation for love? What changed when you sought connection instead of approval? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your insight may help someone choose awareness over ego. Trust does not break suddenly. It erodes quietly long before betrayal is visible. Betrayal is often imagined as a dramatic moment of discovery, a confession, an undeniable act. But long before the physical act occurs, something more subtle has already taken place. Honesty has been abandoned. And when honesty leaves, trust has already begun to die. The first fracture is rarely noticed. It begins with small silences. Thoughts left unspoken, feelings minimized, questions avoided. A person senses something shifting inside, but instead of sharing it openly, they retreat inward, not because they wish to deceive, but because truth feels inconvenient, uncomfortable, or disruptive. Honesty requires courage. It risks conflict. It risks being misunderstood. It risks changing the relationship. Silence, on the other hand, feels safe. It preserves the surface while the foundation weakens, and so silence becomes habitual. What is not spoken becomes hidden. What is hidden becomes fertile ground for deception. Deception does not always involve lies. Often it is omission, not saying what matters, not revealing what is changing, not admitting dissatisfaction, attraction, or emotional distance. These omissions create a private inner world that no longer includes the partner. And once this separation exists, betrayal becomes possible. Trust is not broken by action alone. It is broken when transparency disappears. When one partner no longer feels invited into the inner life of the other, intimacy fades. The relationship becomes an arrangement rather than a living connection. Avoiding honesty is often justified internally. I don't want to hurt them. This will cause unnecessary conflict. It's not important. But these justifications protect comfort, not truth, and comfort built on avoidance cannot last. Honesty does not guarantee ease. It may bring difficult conversations. It may reveal incompatibilities. It may demand change, but it keeps integrity intact. It keeps trust alive, even when the relationship must evolve or end. When honesty is present, desire can be discussed. Doubts can be examined. Distance can be addressed. Without honesty, these same forces operate in secrecy, gaining power through suppression. What is hidden grows stronger. What is expressed can be understood. Betrayal often feels shocking to the person who is hurt, because they were excluded long before they were betrayed. The real injury is not only the action, It is the realization that honesty had been absent for a long time. Trust thrives in openness, not perfection. It does not require flawless behavior, but truthful communication. When honesty remains, even painful truths can deepen connection. When honesty disappears, even small deceptions corrode intimacy. The moment honesty is replaced by silence, the relationship enters danger not because something has happened, but because something essential has stopped happening. Have you ever noticed how silence came before betrayal? What changed when honesty returned or when it didn't? Share your reflection in the comments. Your insight may help someone recognize the warning signs early. Nothing collapses in a single moment. There is always a pause where awareness could have entered. Betrayal often feels inevitable when viewed after the fact. The mind tells a story of momentum, one thing led to another. But this story hides an important truth. At every stage there was a moment to pause, a moment to notice, a moment to choose differently. Awareness was always available even if it was ignored. Awareness does not demand immediate action. It asks for stillness. It asks us to observe what is arising within us without being carried away by it. Desire, curiosity, dissatisfaction, these are not commands. They are signals. When awareness is present, signals inform us. When it is absent, signals control us. Cheating does not begin with action. It begins when awareness is replaced by automatic behavior. A message is answered without reflection. A boundary is crossed without acknowledgement. A secret is kept instead of questioned. Each step feels small, but together they form a pattern. Awareness could have interrupted this pattern at any point. Pausing is uncomfortable because it brings clarity. Clarity reveals responsibility, and responsibility demands choice. When someone pauses and becomes aware, they must face what they are doing and why. This confrontation with truth is what many avoid. It is easier to move forward unconsciously than to stop and reflect. Awareness would have asked difficult questions. Why am I drawn to this? What am I avoiding in my relationship? What truth am I unwilling to speak? These questions do not accuse, they illuminate, and illumination dissolves compulsion. Choosing truth does not always preserve the relationship in its current form. It may reveal the need for change, honesty, or even separation, but choosing truth prevents betrayal. It keeps integrity intact. It ensures that whatever happens next is conscious, not destructive. When awareness is absent, behavior feels justified. When awareness returns, excuses fall away. One sees clearly that choice was always present. Not choosing consciously is still a choice, one that leads to harm. Awareness does not eliminate desire or difficulty. It transforms the way we relate to them. It creates space between feeling and action. In that space lies freedom. Freedom is not doing whatever impulse demands. Freedom is choosing with clarity. Many people regret betrayal not because of the action alone, but because they realize too late that awareness could have changed everything. That one honest pause could have redirected the entire path. Awareness does not promise comfort. It promises truth. And truth, though sometimes painful, prevents suffering. The outcome was never fixed. It was shaped by moments of awareness missed, and it can be reshaped by awareness reclaimed. Have you ever seen how one moment of awareness could have changed everything? What helped you pause and choose truth instead of impulse? Share your experience in the comments. Your reflection may help someone interrupt their own pattern. Growth never happens by accident. It happens the moment awareness replaces impulse. In relationships, growth is often misunderstood as time passing or feelings deepening naturally. But love does not mature simply because years go by. Love matures when conscious choices are made again and again, especially when those choices are uncomfortable. Impulse seeks relief. Growth seeks understanding. When impulse leads, decisions are made quickly, emotionally, and often secretly. When awareness leads, there is a pause. In that pause, one can see the consequences of action before acting. This is where love either deepens or dissolves. Choosing honesty over escape is not easy. Honesty demands vulnerability. It risks rejection. It forces us to confront truths we would rather avoid. Escape feels safer because it delays discomfort. But escape never resolves conflict. It only relocates it. What is avoided internally would eventually appear externally. Trust is preserved not by perfection, but by alignment. Alignment between what is felt and what is expressed. When someone chooses honesty, even painful honesty, they signal respect for themselves and for the relationship. This respect creates safety, and safety allows love to grow. Growth asks difficult questions. Am I acting from fear or from clarity? Am I seeking relief or truth? Am I choosing awareness or am I running from it? These questions slow us down. They interrupt patterns. They expose unconscious habits, but they also open the door to transformation. Love that avoids these questions remains fragile. It depends on conditions, attention, and constant reassurance. Love that embraces conscious choice becomes resilient. It can face discomfort without collapsing. It can evolve without betrayal. Every moment presents a choice: to speak or to hide, to reflect or to react, to stay present or to escape into distraction. Growth happens when these moments are met consciously, when honesty is chosen not because it is easy, but because it is true. Conscious choice does not guarantee outcomes. It does not promise that relationships will always survive, but it ensures that whatever unfolds does so with integrity. And integrity is the foundation of real connection. Love that matures through awareness becomes quieter, deeper, and more stable. It no longer relies on impulse or excitement. It rests in understanding. It knows that truth, even when uncomfortable, is an act of care. Growth is not dramatic. It does not announce itself. It happens silently in pauses, in conversations, in moments where escape was possible, but honesty was chosen instead. In these moments, love becomes real. What conscious choice changed the way you love? Have you ever chosen honesty when escape felt easier? Share your experience in the comments. Your insight may help someone choose growth over impulse.